You might be wondering, what is that in the background? Well, that is the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, which is there behind me because, well, it looks cool. And that's really it. But of course, I will not forget. This is the real sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. But that's just kind of a physical representation of that. And I think we need that during these times because Bible Man doesn't exist anymore. I guess, frankly, to be blunt,
Base camp. Oh, more like based camp. Am I right? Am I right? Finally, oh my goodness, how long have we been waiting for a company to just tell their woke employees exactly where they can shove their new leftist ideas? The employees go to Basecamp, which is just it's a software company. They do kind of communication management, that sort of thing. They go to the company, they say, we've got to get involved in this cause and that cause and diversity and inclusion and equity and this and that and this and that. And the CEO sent out a note which said, quote, "We make project management, team communication, and email software." This is the CEO, Jason Fried. "We don't have to solve deep social problems. Chime in publicly whenever the world requests our opinion on the major issues of the day, or get behind one movement or another with time or treasure. These are all important topics, but they are not our topics at work."
Honestly, to an extent, I do agree. I think same thing with religion, to an extent, with Christians. Basically, do your job, and if there is an opening to witness and preach the gospel to somebody, do it in the appropriate manner at lunchtime, but not when you're working because you are working for something else. If you want to do that, go to a church or work at a church. But, well, it's for a, I guess you could say, secular business or just a business in general, do your job. And if there is room for witness or preaching the gospel to somebody, then that is the time to do it. But besides that, do what that you were supposed to do. That you were via your resume, via if you're a plumber, do the plumbing. Don't preach to the masses. You know. Again, it depends, but still. And so with that, same thing with politics. If I work somewhere, I'm not gonna talk about political stuff unless if it's say lunchtime if need be. But other than that, if I'm doing computing, I'm going to do computing because that's my job to compute. And this is basically the first comment. That person's right. Not all companies should say their political opinions, but here their but if they do say their political opinions, I think that they should be able to say it. They should be able to say it. That's the difference here. I'm saying that yes, I don't think that companies should always say their political opinions or beliefs about something, but when they do say it, I think they should have the right to say it. They shouldn't be forced to say something, but if they do say something, they shouldn't be canceled for it unless if it's inciting violence or anything similar to that. Point is, if a company wants to say something politically, they should be able to have the right to say something politically. If they don't want to, they don't want to. And I think that's the difference between me and a lot of right wingers or leftists, especially people like Michael Knowles, who, if it was something Christian conservative and the company said that, I'm assuming he would think that's some type of political, religious persecution. For me, I'm like, well, no, it's just consistency. Uh, it's consistency. If you don't want the so-called gender indoctrination of our children shoved down their throats, I don't think religious indoctrination should be shoved down our kids' throats in Oklahoma. So, I think indoctrination on any side should not be in school. It should be school, mainly.
Other executives at the company pointing out that when employees are spending all their time chiming in on, well, I don't know, Black Lives Matter or some social issue on the official communication channels, That is time that they are not spending working, doing
Exactly.
their jobs, the things that they are paid to do. So as a result of this CEO missive, totally common sense stuff, 1/3 of the company's 60 employees left the company, took buyouts and said, get out of here. And do you know what the executive said? See ya. Bye-bye. Okay. Of course they said see ya, bye-bye. The employees thought that this would be a big blow to the company. Guess who comes out ahead here? You've got the most annoying, useless, unproductive, counterproductive employees. They're saying, if you won't let us waste more of your time while we get paid, we might leave.
You can't fire me. I quit. How dare you say I can't preach to children? It's like, well, I did. That's not your job. Christian persecution. No, wait, hold up. We got the anti-Christian hotline, folks. So if you need, if you didn't do your job instead of just preaching or apostatizing the children of all people, the headline will protect you. I guess I don't know. If you're respectfully, I guess, to an extent, via your fruits, if you're a pathetic Christian who cannot do their job, but just has to preach every single second of their life at work, and you get fired because you didn't do your job, here's the anti-Christian hotline for you. They might plead your case of patheticness. And that's the thing. I used to watch Michael Knowles. I would be like, yes, I agree, but then one of the main reasons why I love the right is mainly due to hypocrisy, and especially now. Again, I don't think you would say this if it was basically employees preaching about anti-woke stuff or preaching the gospel in an inappropriate manner and environment and time in their job. And then they got fired. Or they said, okay, and then, the CEOs were like, all right, bye, we don't need religion shoved down our throats. You would think that's Christian persecution, I'm assuming. I don't know, he might be consistent, but I don't know at this point. Because the right, I think, left, pun intended, a lot of their principles, especially when Trump came in. So I'm like, yeah, I agree, but it's like, I'm consistent, though. And that's the problem with the right, it's inconsistency. And the align left, by the way.
The CEO sitting there, he says, like, what's the catch? Hold on here. You're telling me that
exactly.
I will not have to deal with you, and I don't have to deal with you? Wait, hold on. Is that?
I mean, that's a win-win.
I don't need to do the thing you're demanding now, and I won't have to deal with it in the future, and I'll get a more productive employee? Where do I sign up? Where's the hell? There's got to be some hidden text here, right? No. There were a number of employees who, after they left, said, basically, the company has told us, well, your opinions don't really matter unless it's directly related to the business. A lot of people are going to have a tough time living with that. Yeah, annoying,
I know.
Unproductive, counterproductive people are going to have a hard time with that. But good employees are going to love that. They're going to love that.
The good employees, they're going to do their job because they're a good employee. Not like, they are a slave to the wage case and their masters hate them when they have a single opinion. No, it's like, you got a job, do the job. And I don't necessarily care who or what you are in this sense. If you can do the job, do the job. I'm not gonna ban you from the military. To be blunt. I get the argument, but it's like, if I'm correct, most trans people are not in the combat. They're like in nuclear stuff. And now we need to train people with nuclear stuff now because we fired a lot of them because a lot of them might have been trans, if I'm correct. Look that up. Don't just take my word for it. So it's like, you banned people who aren't even compromised via war fighting, to maybe quote a little bit of the Secretary of Defense, P. Hegseth, and, his incompetence about DEL, froze. DEL. Domination, echo chamber, and loyalty. Already made a video about it there. Point is consistency. I think that is what's missing from the right. And the online left, I don't think ever had consistency, so there's that.
Because obviously, I have definitive political opinions. You, listening to the show, probably have some pretty strong political opinions. But I bet that you would prefer to go into the office every day and not have to worry about those opinions one way or the other. Not have to worry about pushing this view on tax cuts, this view even on immigration, this view on that. You probably just want to go do your job and then go home and spend time with your family and spend time in your community and maybe be involved in the politics of your community, but not have to conflate everything so that your whole personal life and your whole professional life and your whole political life, they're all the same thing, right?
And I think that's one of the main problems with the left and why I'm not a leftist is because they believe that politics, race, gender, sexuality is everything to an extent, to where CRT, I guess in a sensible way, or it might be have been intended to perversely say that everything has to do with race, even though, if I'm correct, CRT, critical race theory, was mainly a college, which if I'm correct still is a college like class, which I think is voluntary. Basically, it says certain things you can see in the lens of race, and it might make more sense, like the justice system, and I think has a point there. But of course, I think the quotes from CRT is like I think if we don't have affirmative action, it will be segregation all over again. Definitely disagree with that. Definitely disagree with white virginity and thinking that everything has to do with race. I didn't get this job because of my race, because of the system. Maybe, but also most likely maybe not. It just depends on where you are as well. But point is, you gotta separate. If you don't, then honestly, when the right says the left isn't happy, same thing for the right, by the way. Yeah, I would agree because both sides seem to just have race, gender, sexuality, politics all for their life and never just playing video games without thinking, hey, these cars, if this was in real life, if Mario Kart was in real life, global warming will be a big problem, right? I just want to play Mario Kart. Or, I don't know if I can play Doom because it has demons. You're fighting the demons. That's like the most Christian video game out there to be. Like, culturally Christian at least, but it's like, I think I've seen the videos, but if not, by the grace of God, you're saved by the cringe. Not all can handle that cringe, but don't worry, our cringe is light in Christianity. Borderline joke. Offended? Here's the hotline. I don't know what to tell you. Don't know what to tell you, folks. I don't. I don't know what to tell you. You don't like jokes? I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. But you've seen those types of videos where it's like this should not Christians shouldn't play this because it has demons, even though you're killing the demons. Wouldn't that be in reinforcing our belief that demons are bad? Wouldn't that be a good thing? I don't know. Video on that topic a little bit. It's like I don't know. I think this is kind of redundant. I just want to play Doom. Alright? I don't need somebody, a YouTuber, Christian YouTuber online saying those stupid stuff, to be blunt. To be blunt. Respectfully to an extent. But a comment with that, what Michael Knowles said to an extent, is in a sense of a way, yeah, your opinions might not matter at the time that you're working in particular.
There is a further step here. So I love what they did. I think we should totally support these guys. But there are three opinions on politics in the workplace. There's the we need to support every single leftist cause. We need to go woke because that's now part of the dominant liberal regime. All right, that's one. The second view is politics shouldn't have anything to do with our work, and economic choices shouldn't necessarily have to do with all these political views. I think that's where most of us want to be, and that's the message that Basecamp is trying to put out here. But then there's the third version, which I think is the real version, which is we need to actively support conservative companies that in any way break from woke politics. We as conservatives need to support those companies, and we need to punish companies that don't.
See, this is why I said the inconsistency. I'm like, okay, you're good with that. All right, I can see the second one. Then the third one's like, no, you missed the point. You become the very thing that you sought to destroy, but they believe it's necessary for necessary sake, which, well, I don't think that's how that works, and it could be kind of fascistic, but that's, I already made a video how Michael Knowles is a little bit fascist anyways. I already made that. But my comment for that is, in a sense of a way, yeah, your opinions might not matter at the time that you're working in a particular business, but that doesn't mean you can't say it if you can, which Michael Knowles seems to not want that at all, or say for blah blah blah. And what Michael Knowles said, that is what most people are doing, you know? Either it's the first one or the second one, but the third one I think is just going too far. And, well, I say, but him saying that we need to actively punish those who don't support conservative companies is going too far. You can support conservative companies if you're conservative, that just kind of makes sense, but kind of punishing people for not being conservative, I guess, or punishing people who should be conservative in your mind. It's a business. It's a company. Why have that much? I guess value for it. It's a business. I don't boycott Hobby Lobby for being Hobby Lobby, nor do I praise Target for being Target. I just go to Hobby Lobby and Target and be like, only at Hobby Lobby, or like, yeah, only at Target. Only at Target I smell that cereal smell. Only at Hobby Lobby they'll have the stupidest respectfully, of books like Toxic Empathy. I don't know how that works, but only at Hobby Lobby, but I don't boycott or praise Target or whatever for having that cereal smell. It's like, or their policy on bathrooms, because we have to have a policy on bathrooms. Ugh. Video on that. I think that's like the fourth thing. I can only do so much, folks. I don't know if I'm gonna do a lot of other stuff, so I'm gonna try to not be like, no. Gonna try to keep moving on. Well, moving on.
And I know that's going to sound icky to a lot of people because a lot of us say, well, I shouldn't have to make political decisions when I'm buying sneakers or when I'm.
I do agree, just buy a sneaker, but I think what he's about to say, to an extent, I do agree. And I think a lot of online leftists do have a point in it, but I think, like with the online left and the extreme right, at least, if not the mainstream right, sadly, now, you go a little bit too far on it. Which, again, consistency. I don't think it should be political for me to buy a toy at Target or buy a book at Hobby Lobby, but I do somewhat understand it.
Project management software or whatever at Basecamp. But you actually do. Because in politics and in war, your opponent has a say in the rules of the game. And what the left has told us is that every economic decision that you make is going to be political. And they are going to reward the companies that go far to the left and undermine our political order. So you know what we've got to do if we in any way want to fight back against that? We need to do the same in the opposite direction.
In a sensible way, that makes sense, but again, I think it can go too far. Just going too far, like boycotting a lot of companies to an extent. It's like, no, just go to a company that you like and let the best business win. Marketplace, buddy. Marketplace of ideas, free market, buddy. I thought that was the whole thing, baby. But I guess not. I guess not, folks. I guess not anymore. But also, what a lot of online leftists say a lot is like, well, if you buy from this company, you might be rewarding how they might, say, treat their employees, which is why, if I'm correct, Vice Rhino, or just people on the left, might not buy at Amazon because of how they treat their workers, which is understandable, and I think it's complicated because might not be that much of an alternative, and even if there was, it's tough. It's tough. The best how I see it is like use the bad systems for good, and show how it could be used for good, and prayerfully that might change the system or company or business in general. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. But until then, you gotta do what you gotta do. Sometimes you just gotta give, you live at Rome, do what the Romans do, to an extent. Unless if you say you can't preach God, then don't do what the Romans do. Right? Right. We're not there yet, folks in America, but, well, just saying, when there's a extreme action, there might be an equal extreme reaction. I'm just saying. Just saying. And so with that, it kind of makes sense you don't want to necessarily buy or contribute to this particular thing. But I think it goes, again, a little bit too far to where you have to boycott a company that's not conservative. Then it's like, no. If you value it that much, I think, one, if you're a Christian, I think it could be idolatry and repent of that in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Because, no, it's not God, it's not your God. So that's one. Or two, just support the conservative companies and don't support or don't go to the what you call the woke companies. Boom. And they might lose business, and like Disney, they will shift because that's how the world is like. I already made a video there. I'm sorry. If I reference others, you just have to look it up in my channel, because in Minecraft you can only do 5 cards for each video, so extras.
And we need to actively not use the project management software that goes woke, and we need to actively use Basecamp or any other company that resists the wokeness. We have to do that. I know that we don't want to do that. We want to go back to the halcyon days of, 4 or 5 decades ago when the companies did not go woke. But this is the world we're living in now, and we've got to reward companies like Basecamp. James Carville.
And again, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense to an extent. But again, to another extent, I think you can just go a little bit too far to where you're valuing something that in a Christian view at least will pass away, and I think you just, again, maybe go on woke Amazon and get a Jesus is Lord and try to convince Amazon to be less woke. If you want to do it that way, I think that'll be the best way to do it.
Legendary Democrat strategist. He's the guy who looks like an alien. Don't like this. Can't understand the word. The economy, stupid. That guy. He is breaking with the Democratic Party on the wokeness issue, and he's saying wokeness is going to be an absolute poisonous ideology for Democrats because it's going to show people how out of touch the Democratic Party is. It's going to cause the Democratic Party to lose the common sense. We should make clear, this is a...
especially now, I would say, to an extent, I can see that. I really can see that. I really can. But, But, in another comment, in a sensible way, yeah, your opinions might not matter at the time that you're working in a particular business, but that doesn't mean you can't say it, or it just depends. And that's why some, if not most people, are doing that. Well, I just sit there. I might be a little bit wonky, I'm sorry. I didn't have much good grammar, and I already talked about that with my skills issue video. But Michael Knowles thinks that they're trying to push some agenda, and yes, some, if not most companies are, because companies do that. But some are just saying, for me, X, Y, and Z. I think they can do that, and they should do that if it's in the appropriate time and way. A company can say their political stuff if they want to, but if they don't, they don't. If they do, they do.
Political conversation. It's not that James Carville, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is questioning any one aspect of what gets lumped into wokeness, but I think you're saying, as a political strategy, this dog doesn't hunt.
Well, Naya doesn't hunt on several levels. First of all, it sounds, I call it the politics of the faculty lounge. And in my view, if you want to, in politics, you should speak the language of the people. You should speak clear, direct English and address people as they address each other, not like the humanities department at Amherst wants you to address everybody.
So there is an irony here.
Exactly. And the irony is that might have somewhat caused the election for Kamala Harris. I think mainly is because she said, oh, listen, I get it. I grew up in a household family, saying this for thousands of years. But, shut up, look at the charts, everything's fine, but vote for me and I'll make things better. Guys, I grew up in a middle-class home. It takes thousands of years to explain that. And I think that's why she lost. And also, everything else with Dick Cheney and all. I'm like, yeesh. Trump, though, everybody would say he's a liar. And especially now, he's kind of just, well, the worst presidents. I mean, let's be frank here. Before that, he was at least speaking what most people were thinking. And Democrats, please listen to this. Since Trump knows media well, he understood what gets the clicks. It's the reason why he's the most popular president, I think, ever. For good or bad. I think it's a mixture of both, but I think it's mainly for bad. Especially now. He knows how it works. He knows how to get the clicks, and he knows how to speak to people. Because, though he says radical stuff, he says what a lot of people are thinking to an extent. But I think he takes it too far, and then, says a lot of things that are bad, and, well, most people are not on his side anymore. Makes sense. And so I think that's one of the reasons why he won. And also, he had an alternative. And also, it was mainly a referendum of the establishmentarians anyways throughout the world. So this wasn't just an American thing. This was a worldwide thing. People are tired of the nonsense. And people will get tired more of the nonsense, so they will most likely vote for somebody like Gavin Newsom. And, well, who knows? Maybe Ron DeSantis after that. Then, I don't know, our first gay president finally, Pete Buttigieg, at my, I don't know, adulthood. I'm an adult, but, more adulthood, I guess you can say.
James Carville is saying people should speak very clear English because James Carville has one of the thickest Louisiana accents that anybody does in public life. But his point is absolutely right. And his point is exactly the point of Antonio Gramsci, a radical theorist that we mention quite a lot on this show, because he in many ways is the godfather of this woke, politically correct ideology that we're now seeing flourish today. But he was writing and calling for these things 100 years ago. The common sense, you've got to hold on to the common sense. And if you have the politics of the faculty lounge and you've got Nike saying the American flag is evil, don't post anything with even the Betsy Ross flag, and you've got Coca-Cola saying we can't have election integrity laws, and you've got, I don't know, Gillette razors telling your little daughter to shave her face because she's going to be a little boy now, or Harry's razors or whatever, then that's going to be a big problem.
And I think another big problem is, like the Babylon Bee saying, you don't want those woke, normal banks like Chase. You should have Christian, God-fearing, pro-Trump banks. And I'm like, that's also a problem too. I don't want my company to say stuff about anti-woke nonsense. Like, I just want the bank to protect my money. I don't care about your beliefs on Trump, man. It's like, that's the problem. I don't like both radicals. I don't like both extremes. And that's why, most of the time, Daily Wire and The Daily Show get like thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of views. Same thing for David Pacman and Brian Taylor Cohen. Because mainly, everybody can agree with this. They don't like the radicalism and the extremism. Even if extremists like the Daily Wire take down a different extremist, like Democracy Now! Or something. That's still an extreme being taken down because people don't like extremists. That's just a fact.
And he's right, for a little while. He's right. If you do too much too fast, that's going to be a problem. But if you take this further and you follow more closely what people like Gramsci and the critical theorists and the New Left later and the Maoists in the 60s and 70s and all of these people who followed from them, if you go a little further, what you realize is that gradual change here, taking wars or taking positions of influence and then exerting that influence throughout the whole culture, eventually the goal is to transform the common sense.
And in the other sense, you have these seven mountains, or I say seven heads, biblical revelation, if I'm correct, mandate, which basically is basically Christian nationalist and wants Christian dominant influence on media, television. Actually, look it up. Look it up. I think it's mainly like media, entertainment, television. I think marriage, family, government, and I think business. I think those are seven mountains. I could be wrong, or I say the seven heads. If you know what that is, look it up. I think it's in Revelation. Look up seven heads of the beast. That's honestly, I think that's what it is to an extent. I think it checks out. I don't think it's exactly one-to-one, but I think it's like types and shadows because of how I view Revelation as more like a circle than straight line. Basically, for example, there are many Antichrist people. Hitler, Mao, Stalin, etc. That's the circle. That's, like it says in the Bible, the Antichrist spirit has already come, but the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist, the final Antichrist, will be the future, will be the straight line. The final, because Revelation is the book of finals, the final Antichrist, the final war, the final judgment, the final rebellion. But during that time, there's many battles, judgments, rebellions, and then finally the final X, Y, and Z. So that's how I view Revelation there. So I think the Seven Mountains mandate is somewhat the seven heads of the beast, to be blunt, or as a sort of quirky phrase for it, for showing the reality of the sort of Antichrist-like, if not at least Antichrist-like spirit there, or just influence with the seven heads mandate, which is trying to go back to an imaginary tradition that never exists, like some, if not a lot of fascistic ideas and ideologies, as Michael Knowles would say, come from. So this isn't just a left thing, this is a right-wing thing, which is why some companies who are overly political, I think, are trying to come back to that, because I think Babylon B might think that banks used to be so godly, or they have to be now to go back to the olden days of banks that weren't woke, whatever that means.
That has happened to a large degree.
And I made a video on that.
Think about your favorite woke millennial. Think about even some of the Zoomers, the generation below. They are taught from kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, or now, I don't know, you start school at age 2 now or something. You didn't do that when I was a kid, when I was a youth, but now they keep you in school longer and longer to indoctrinate you more and more. So you start school at age 2 or 3, and you don't leave until you've got 7 graduate degrees in advanced lesbian studies. So you're there for a long time, and you're steeped in this idea that Christopher Columbus evil, George Washington evil, the history of the West absolutely evil.
And the opposite of that is thinking that they're all good. George Washington, amazing person. Christopher Columbus, a great guy. America, exceptional. Chosen by God. Not really. That's a pseudo-historical. Here's the truth. Here's basically history. George Washington had great ideas, but wasn't necessarily the best person. Christopher Columbus, not the best person at all. He just wasn't. He might have did a good achievement of finding America, the second person that found America. But other than that, America, the ideal of it is great, but we have not lived up to it, as many people have said. Frederick Douglass, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., somewhat Malcolm X, somewhat not Malcolm X, etc. And that's just how American is because of our experiment. It's still going. Pray if we'll still keep going. Jesus Christ's name, amen. But like Bill Maher said, this is when the Republic became a dictatorship, when people were unquestionably praising Trump and saying that he should get a third term. And he's serious about that. When will we wake up? It's like, Mike Johnson had a point. It was 300 years for the Roman Empire. We're close to 300 years, guys. Let's not make the same mistake that they did. Let's not let history repeat itself. Let's keep this experiment going as long as we can. Jesus Christ's name, amen. But ultimately, this is not my ultimate place as a Christian. It's not. So if America goes, it's fine because Christianity will still live on. So
literature, what's sexist and racist? William Shakespeare, he was probably a white supremacist patriarch. And you're taught to hate your culture. And even so obviously the left is going along with that. They're the ones pushing it.
And the right says to just undoubtedly, unquestionably, like dictatorship, accept and praise your culture no matter what. Yeah, it might make mistakes, but that's just the human condition. We live in the fallen world. Yes, they had slaves, so what? Not so what, that's very important. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean they were all devils, but they weren't God's chosen either, necessarily.
Many people who are in the middle, many people who are even center-right, who are those kind of squishy conservatives, they have bought this line of argument because the left has in many ways successfully transformed the common sense. So Carville's right. It might cost Democrats some elections in the short term, but they are winning the long game.
I don't know. I don't know how he feels about that now. It just depends.
James Carville's thinking like a conservative here, just in that next election. But the Democrats don't even care so much about the next election. They care about winning that 100 years war.
I would say Republicans are. Democrats, I don't know. I think they're I don't think they are at this point. So I think the tides have turned to an extent.
Long march through the institutions that conservatives don't recognize. So if we don't push back against that, instead of just gloating and saying, oh, well, we're going to do much better in the midterms now because Democrats are trying to trans the kids or something. If we don't focus on the longer game too, then it's not going to matter if we win an election next year. Oh, good, we won the Congress back. Okay, what's that going to do if the Democrats are totally shaping the culture?
I wouldn't say they're shaping the culture, especially now. I think the culture is trying to shape them. They're trying to say, where's the opposition party? We hate King Trump and President Elon Musk now. So I don't think it's going to be because of woke culture that the Republicans might lose bigly in 2026 and 2028. I think it's because of their own downfall. They fell on their own sword here.
They're going really, really hard, and maybe that gives you, a sense of sensationalism and craziness right now. But you're going to see the effects of that carry through in the long haul.
I think we've been long overdue for a little bit of a word from my sponsors, folks. So here you go. My sponsors are you guys. Those who support me on PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
I'll show you how crazy this is. Caitlyn Jenner, who is, I suppose, the leading Republican candidate for governor now in California, shows you about the state of California. Caitlyn Jenner just came out and said, I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports. It just isn't fair, and we have to protect girls' sports in our schools. On the one hand, good, I'm glad. I don't like some of the wording here, right? Because listen to the wording. He says, I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports. There is no who are trans. There is no trans identity. There is this contrived
give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Idea of the trans identity, but it doesn't have to do with our actual human nature. One cannot actually be a boy, but have the biology of a girl, but really truly be a boy. That is a mistaken understanding of human nature. And Caitlyn Jenner, is obviously buying into this mistaken idea of human nature. So I don't like that, but hey, I'll give him credit. That's great. I'm glad that he opposes boys playing in the girls' sports. It would appear that Caitlyn Jenner has a more conservative view on transgender issues than Kristi Noem in South Dakota. How insane is that? shows you the
and it shows you the massive unprincipledness of Christy Nobe now, the dog killing, very, very MAGA-ing person now, because I think she saw the shift and of the things of this world, and sadly, she might be of the things of this world, or is a children of the world and not of God. Prayfully, she and Michael Knowles and those on the online left will get saved in Jesus Christ's name, amen, because that's the most important thing, is getting saved. But there's been a lot of comments that I think, based on just kind of reading them, it's like, I think I should have read them earlier, but if they oh, well, no, this is what it's for, because I kind of forgot. It's been very long. This has been just taking the dust off. It's been 1,000 years ever since I typed these in. Incorrect spelling and all. Yeesh, but I shall overcome. Alright, in a good way. Alright. But this might be dated, but still, I will still read it because I think I'm a little bit behind. I need to catch up on my comments paper, if you will. At the end of the day, I think that people like Michael Knowles and I think that we can find some very little common ground. But when it comes to fundamental things, that's where we have a big problem. Michael Knowles isn't really saying anything bad here. It might be a little bit later on, but I think this was earlier on. At least here. It seems like a lot of big top conservatives like Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and Stephen Crowder are getting maybe more popularity and subscribers than the left or people like me, because most conservatives are sometimes relatable until they show their true colors. Like earlier on here, I'm like, yes, I agree, yes, I got nothing really bad to say here, Michael Knowles, but then when he really gets into it, like punishing companies and things of that nature, and now with the whole transgenderism and all those things, I usually have a disclaimer in the description, but for anybody who might be trans, I'm sorry, disclaimer now, I should have vetted this, but I kind of forgot. I am truly sorry if you just left, which is understandable, because sadly our country, or at least our government, is being kind of like China to you. Trans people in America right now are kind of Christians from China. It's getting kind of bad for them. Even if you disagree with their lifestyle or identity, it's like having to check to see if you need to go to a hotel room to use a bathroom, or go to a friend's house. It's like, I don't know, kids, conversation, yes, definitely with that, but bathrooms, locker rooms, totally understandable. Respectfully to trans people, totally understandable on the right when it comes to locker rooms, but bathrooms, most of them have stalls. It's like, I don't know about that one. Again, talked about that in the video, so one more context, look there. That's why I made them, because I'm like, hey, I know it's gonna be like this. I don't want to explain myself over and over again. You have the video. I made it just for the situation to an extent. For Michael Knowles, he says, quote, "We need to punish those that are not with them/us." Sorry, that was paraphrasing. Pretty much, Michael Knowles was saying that conservatives need to support conservative companies and punish those who don't. If I'm correct, that's the actual quote. Let that sink in. Michael Knowles is not for freedom, he's for freedom for particular people. I won't go there now, but you basically rules for me but not for thee to an extent. Possibly, or at least it's not enough to just support conservative companies, but you have to punish those that don't. Which might be just boycotting or just not going to that store or talking bad about it, which might create reg economics. Look up on that video of mine there. And I think we have caught up to an extent, I think. I think.
Ramifications of
We'll
this
see.
woke politics, these woke corporations. Because why did Kristi Noem cave on the NCAA and college sports allowing men to compete against women? I don't know. I don't know for sure. I'm just speculating. Did she get a call from some donors, from some corporations? Did she realize
I think they
that
blackmailed her for her dog killing incident, murder of her pet incident, possibly. They might have had that. I don't know. Who knows? Caitlyn Jenner is a woman, obviously. You know, if you didn't know the history, she used to be a he. I think not Caitlyn. It was something Jenner, but now she's Caitlyn Jenner. She basically looks like a woman. Like, I don't know. It's like pick a bigger fish to fry. I don't know, man.
was going to have to get involved in a long, protracted battle with the NCAA, with the universities, with these ostensibly private institutions that exert a lot of political power? I assume some of that had something with her decision not to oppose the trans issue in sports at the college level, even though she would do it at the high school level. But I say appears.
I think, at least for me, talk a little bit about it. I think it's mainly because college, you already have rules. High school is understandable. I think it makes a lot of sense there. Hormones are going on fire. Yeah, it makes sense to have still that separation. But college, I think mainly, for Kristi Noem at least, I think it's mainly because, one, they already had rules for that. And two, high school, they don't have rules for that. So, because it's high school, it's not really. There's no stakes, but still, again, hormones are on fire. It makes a lot more sense to still have that recognition of biological stuff. Not in a perverted way, like what's between your legs or whatever, but like, hey, hormones are on fire right now, and, you know, hey, you know, it might be a phase, may not be a phase, you know, but that's why some people are still trans, because it wasn't a phase. Not that, you know, but.
It's always the problem with Caitlyn Jenner. On many, many issues, would Caitlyn Jenner be better than Gavin Newsom? Of course. Frankly, he might even be better as a policy matter on the transgender issue. But what are we giving away if we get behind Caitlyn Jenner for governor?
I don't know. Possibly inconsistency, especially now, but like, I think this comment might be what this is. Okay, and this is where I disagree here. I knew it was coming. I just knew it was coming. It's like Disney Channel from 2016 to now, which I think now is at least like 2019 at the point of typing in this script here, a little bit notes script, comments script here. Now it's getting better, but almost pretty much every single time when I compliment Disney, mainly Disney Channel, it bites back at me. It bites me back. It strikes. It's okay. It bites back. It strikes back at me. By doing something terrible like Zombies 2. Like Disney, Michael Knowles to strike back with something wrong. I think to an extent, I think this is basically, I think I might say it later on in my comments anyways. It's like, dude, get the win. Take the win. But for him, it's going too far. And I'm like, I don't know what you want. And I think it goes back to not just supporting, but also punishing companies, depending on what that means, might be going too far. And thinking everything's political, like the online left does. It's like, dude, you have the most conservative trans person. Take the win. Take the win. Like, like, what? It doesn't. I don't know. It's shooting yourself in the foot.
We are, I think, embracing the transgender issue. I think we're giving up our understanding of human nature, even if we might get some slightly better policy. That's my fear here.
But I do get it, because the online left does this with, like, liberals, the distasteful, hypocritical liberals or center right or lefties. They really hate people like me, folks. I don't know why. I guess I'm consistent. I don't know. All I left is something else, folks. It is something else. We all know that. We all know that one. They would also say, hey, I wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom, but they also somewhat understand, like, hey, that's my only option, that it's Kamala Harris. Even though I think she is working with genocide Joe Biden, Palestinian lives will be more better to an extent comparing her to Trump, at least, which does seem to be coming to fruition. And I think a lot of online leftists as well are like, no, I gotta go with my principles. Okay, vote for the third party that will not win and just give more votes to Trump, which Prime Credit did. Jill Stein, everybody! Yay.
And that's a big give. I was talking to a friend of mine who said the only way conservatives can endorse Caitlyn Jenner is if they form an organization called Conservatives for Bruce, and we only call him Bruce Jenner, and we basically ignore the fact that he thinks that he's a woman or pretends to be a woman. It's a funny answer, and I think it does address the problems that we have, but
I think it would just be hateful, bigoted, disgusting, and well, he wouldn't say that. At least for me, it's like that would. What do you gain? I don't get it. What do you gain? Caitlyn Jenner didn't hurt anybody. I get it. Bruce Jenner used to be a great icon, and now it's Caitlyn Jenner, and it's like, what do you do with that? Especially those who watched at that time him, Bruce Jenner, compete. That is understandable, but I think it's like with Bill Cosby. It's like, hey, I might still like the Cosby Show and Fat Albert, or for some, overweight Albert. That might be a little bit woke, but I'm just saying, I do that because, it's like, okay, it's Albert, okay? It's, whether you say Fat Albert or overweight or heavyset Albert, it's Albert. We all know Albert. Okay? I'm dating myself, but that's not the point here. Point is, I try to separate the artist from the art sometimes, or from the actor and the character. I try to separate. When I look at Albert, I don't necessarily see Bill Cosby, the rapist, etc. I see Albert, the very overweight guy for comedic effect. Hey, hey, I still like this guy and he's okay. I'm just saying. So with that, since I was not born when Bruce Jenner was a thing, and now it's Caitlyn Jenner, which is fine. I wouldn't say a thing, but when Bruce Jenner was that, and now she is Caitlyn Jenner, at least for me, it might help to be like, I'll still remember Jenner as Bruce, but I understand that she is now Caitlyn, and I respect that because that's what she wanted, and she's not harming anybody. Well, I guess that's too squishy, that's too squishy there.
It's a little too clever by half, right? Because Caitlyn Jenner is, if he is elected, he is going to put himself out there as a woman. People are going to look up and say, oh, he is a woman. We are now acknowledging this. Even the Republicans are acknowledging this in society. And Democrats, they're the real transphobes or something like that. So you lose a lot here. I also say appears because I don't know that Caitlyn Jenner really supports this. Don't forget, Kristi Noem talked a good game on the transgender issue until the rubber met the road, and then she caved. What does Caitlyn Jenner really feel here? Caitlyn Jenner wrote an op-ed in 2018, so not 3 years ago, in the Washington Post. And the headline was, "I thought Trump would help trans people. I was wrong." And this is the money line here in the piece. The reality is that the trans community is being relentlessly attacked by this president. relentlessly attacked.
Especially now, like, definitely now. Maybe not back then to an extent, but definitely now. Like, that's just a fact. And I'm sorry, there are citizens, they're American citizens. Most of them are fine people. Very fine.
By Donald Trump, the most pro-LGBT president in U.S. history.
When? Okay, maybe back in the day when he's like, being gay is like having a cheeseburger. You like this particular type of cheeseburger. He was very progressive with LGBTQ plus stuff and other things that I tweeted out from one of Vice Rhino's clips on the watering hole. Just scroll down and you'll find it somehow, I think. Or, I don't know, have advanced search or whatever. Point is, Trump was supportive of LGBTQ plus people, but then when it became inconvenient for the radical extreme, very important there, heretic or heretical evangelicals, not all of them, but the extreme, political, idolatrous, very heretical evangelicals, he had to shift because as the things of this world does, they shift from this way to that way, going to and fro. That's how it works.
Waving the rainbow flag on the campaign trail. Says the leader of our nation has shown no regard for an already marginalized and struggling community. He has ignored our humanity. He has insulted our dignity. What?
Definitely.
He has made trans people into political pawns as he whips up animus against us in an attempt to energize
and now the right is just using detransitioners who should be loved and accepted and understood and heard as political pawns for another marginalized group, trans people. It's like, at least for me, I think the LGBTQ plus community should put the D there for detransition. I know that might be essentially going back to the C word, because this might be on Twitter, or not trans, but I don't know, I think that might help, because I think ultimately they're three of a minority. They're a minority who are detransition. That's a very big minority of a minority of trans people, which is a minority of LGBTQ plus people. So it's like, it's disgusting. It is just frankly disgusting, if not frankly somewhat maybe even demonic, or influenced via demonically. At least behind the scenes in the spiritual realm, because I'm gonna talk about Satan's plans and how he does stuff and what's demonic a little bit later on in the future of my channel. But point is, I think that's part of their job, is to divide, conquer, fear, get people as many to hell as possible with them so they won't be there in torment alone. I think that's mainly Satan's job here. Not from God. He chose that job. Okay? Just to be frank.
Our dignity. What? He has made trans people into political pawns as he whips up animus against us in an attempt to energize the most right-wing segment of his party.
Yep.
Claiming his anti-transgender policies are meant to protect the country. Yeah, duh. He's saying that people who are very, very confused and have various physical procedures on them that make them a little out of fighting shape shouldn't be in the military necessarily. He's saying that boys shouldn't compete against girls. He's saying that men shouldn't use the ladies' room. This is the vicious anti-transgender stuff that Caitlin's talking about. He goes on, this is politics at its worst. It is.
I mean, you're calling him a he. Like, he doesn't get it, but hopefully you do guys get a little bit of a commercial break. And I shall return. Oh gosh, I can't do that. I'm just gonna stand up. Man, ugh. I did some jump rope. Yeesh. I'm out of shape. And not because I'm trans, but because I'm out of shape, folks. So here's your commercial break. Oh. Don't be the cave. Oh. Alright, this is not just some sponsor or Patreon plug. It's about following him, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you want to follow him, if you want to give your life to Christ today, prayer is in the description down below. But if you're a backslider and you want to rededicate your life to Christ, description down below for YouTube. But if you want the gift, the free gift that Jesus Christ can only give, Jesus is the only Holy Ghost baptizer. If you want to be baptized in the Holy Ghost, the evidence of speaking in tongues, prayer is in the description down below. It might be way up there, way down there in the description. Just depends on how long my description is for my show, my podcast. So, yeah, if you want to give your life to Christ, or if you're backsliding, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit, yeah, to speak in tongues, those prayers are in the description down below. But if you forgot about it, or if you're wrestling with it, and you finally decide, okay, I am going to get saved, or, okay, I am going to rededicate my life to Christ, or, okay, I am going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, and be able to speak in tongues. All of those three prayers are in all of my videos. From the first one to this one and to the ones to come, all of those three prayers are in the description down below for all of my videos. So if you do forget, or if you are wrestling with it, and you finally decided, okay, I am going to do this, whether it's giving your life to Christ, rededicating your life to Christ, or being baptized in the Holy Spirit, the evidence of speaking in tongues, those three prayers are always in the description down below in every video that I make. Alright, I think I need to catch up on some comments here from me. And that's one of the reasons why I left political conservatism. Not fully political conservatism, to an extent. And definitely not the physical aspect of conservatism via conserving stuff, either politically or religiously or theologically, etc. Is because now people like Michael Knowles and other conservatives are they're saying since the left is doing these things, we should do these things too. So pretty much fight fire with fire, which can work, but your case is just going to make things worse for you and for the left. I think ultimately, that is one of the reasons why I left the right, because I saw the very thing that they said that they were against, and it was like, well, if that's wrong, what else is wrong? And, well, I deconstructed in some things in my faith and in politics, but I didn't give everything away. I just, like, with an onion, it's like, okay, there is a conservative principle that seems to say, hey, let's try to separate politics from this, while left wing doesn't do that. On purpose, because I think everything's political. I understand both sides, but I'm more so for the right. That's why, depending on the issue, I'm center left, right, or center progressive or conservative. It just depends. And as a Christian, I'm a Christ centrist. I'm a Christian first and foremost. Then secondly, center left, right, progressive, or conservative, depending on the issue. Cultural, legal, etc.
Goes on. This is politics at its worst. It is unacceptable. It is upsetting. It has deeply personally hurt me. Believing that I could work with Trump and his administration to support our community was a mistake. The recently leaked DHS memo that suggests preposterously and unscientifically that the government ought to link gender to one's genitalia at birth.
I mean, yeah, because gender is just a little bit different. It's correlative but not causal, and again, I talked about more about that on my video all about that, so if you have any more questions, just go to that video. It's called My Thoughts on LGBTQ+. You should find it quite quickly on my channel. Just go to my channel page, you should find it there, or just type that in, and the thumbnail will be rainbow flag for, I think, the X on the right and check mark on the left, and me being kind of like that in a sense via my VTuber avatar. There, to be specific, because I know there's a lot of videos about my thoughts on LGBTQ plus already, so you know, yeesh. Yikes, yikesers, I guess you could say.
Is just one more example in a pattern of political attacks. Preposterously and unscientifically, he says, It would be to link one's sex to one's genitals.
Because it's a lot more complicated than that, Michael Knowles. Even in biology, it's like that's why sex is bimodal, just two. Because it's not just ones and zeros. There is sometimes a two or a three or a second genitalia or intersex, etc.
This guy, who I'm not convinced that.
Which, listen, you can say, okay, that's just something that proves the rule. That's not everybody, sure, but if we're talking about biology, facts here, that's why sex is, if I'm correct, called bimodal. Not just two, because there isn't just two, because it is very specific, especially if you get maybe sexual transmitted diseases. If you're intersex, it might be totally different if you just have one genitalia, which most people have, but some don't, and that's very important to know, especially if you're in the medical field, because you might not need to get this medicine, but you need half of this medicine because of your biological structure.
Jenner even wrote this op-ed, because most of these celebrities don't write their own op-eds, but the guy who wrote, and
I don't know how Caitlyn Jenner's a celebrity. I don't know what a celebrity means to Michael Knowles, because he used to be he wanted to. Most of these people are like dropouts from Hollywood or comedy because they had an opinion that's so crazy that they had to leave, and now they do this. And it's like, man, you like you said, you could have just not said stuff about political stuff. I don't know. I just get that to yourself at all. I don't know.
Or put his name on this
I know
op-ed
their true story.
has absolutely no business in
I
the
know their
Republican
full
Party.
story.
This is insane. And if we endorse this stuff, if we endorse what is in this op-ed, we are not conserving anything because we're giving up human nature. And we are now saying that if you believe that men and women are different, you're a bigot and you have no place in the Republican Party. The people who hold those views have no place in the Republican Party. There are some people, though. Look, this is a political winner of an issue to say boys shouldn't compete against girls. Everyone knows that this is true. This is totally common sense. The vast, vast, vast majority of Americans believe in this, which is why I suspect Caitlyn Jenner is putting out these statements.
Which, by the way, if I'm correct, if you just said, should boys be in women's sports, of course people would say no, but if you get more detailed, it might be like, oh, okay, 50%, 20%, 30%, 99%, 1%. So, yeah, that's just not necessarily being all truthful there, but yeah.
Here. Whether it's his campaign that's putting it out or whether he even agrees with this, who knows? But every governor in America basically is coming out and saying this, and some of them, I suspect, believe it. Ron DeSantis just came out and signed a bill saying that boys can't compete against girls. Gave a good.
And before we get more into that, here's a comment for the previous rant of trans people from Michael Knowles. The comment I have is that this is the reason why the conservative era, I guess, and the Republican Party are most likely never going to win elections or win the 100 Years' War or whatever. It may be like the transgender war that's going on right now in some red states in the South. It's because people like Michael Knowles are against little compromises that helps his terrible ideology and would use people who actually agree with him and know that it would help their party in general, but he's against them because there's something that you just hate. It's sad, but again, I'm kind of just like, the right is not mine, not the left's, you, the right, and conservatives. So yeah, the left and people like me are just going to keep winning, and you guys keep losing is because of small-minded, uncompromised people like Michael Knowles. I might have said it a little bit differently now, but yeah, pretty much. I think eventually this sort of anti-Big Tent, to an extent, is going to hurt them, which is why I think that he has changed his mind. Big Tent is great now. It just depends on what you mean by Big Tent, because Big Tent usually means like the Supreme Court he was against. I think he talks about that in this episode. Good old water. that a big tent basically means that you have a big tent. A lot of people can go in that tent of, say, conservatism or republicanism or Republican Party. If I'm correct, Michael Knowles, either still today or at least back then, especially in this video, if I'm correct, is very anti that. He thinks it should be a small tent, and again, I think to an extent, the left would keep winning because to an extent they do have a big tent, which might not be so good because then that tent might involve communists and Marxists, and now with the MAGA big tent is fascists, authoritarians, Christian nationalists, and Nazis.
And why?
Governor DeSantis, a bill of the similar nature is about to cross your desk. You sign it.
Oh, yeah, we're going to protect our girls. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter, and they're both very athletic, and we want to have opportunities for our girls. They deserve an even playing field, and that's what we're doing with what Mississippi did, with what Florida did, and I know what other states are going to do, so I look forward to be able to sign that into law.
Speaking of bodily transitions, to me, the most interesting part of this clip, and you wouldn't notice if you were just listening to it, but if you've seen this clip, does Ron DeSantis look like he's lost some weight? It looks to me like the guy has gone on a little bit of a diet. You know, his suits used to be kind of oversized. Now it's a little bit trimmer. Looks a little bit better on camera. His hair is a little bit better done. Looks to me almost like this guy is running for president. And I think it's...
He did until, it was the Republican primary, aka who praises Trump the most and who would not win. It's like, this is a race for VP. Come on, this is a race for VP. And not the one. It was J.D. Vance. That guy. That guy. Oh, I'm so sorry for you guys. It was like, oh, you guys were so close. No, you weren't. It's like, why have a primary if it's like, alright guys, we're gonna figure out, alright ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna figure out who will be the VP, because this is definitely not for the president. It's like, that's what it was, and none of them won. None of them won. And it's like, wow, shocker, really? In my comment with Florida's transgender, anti-trans bill, is of course, Florida is in the transgender wars, and it was going to happen, but it's kind of like the countries that have bad governments but good scenery in their countries. Florida is beautiful. I went to Florida. Some of my family's in Florida, or were in Florida, but the politics, my gosh, again, I'm not surprised that Mississippi did it as well. I mean, Florida comes in the ring where I'm not surprised at all. And I think Georgia as well came into the ring before Florida. Kind of like with the Confederacy, if I'm correct. It was Georgia, then Florida. You know, the Bonnie Fruit flag that bears the single star. That thing, that song.
The obvious. Ron DeSantis has been positioning himself to run for president now for a while, and he's done a great job. I think he's doing a terrific job in Florida, and he's doing a good job at running for president. I have the only bit of caution I've ever urged on everyone jumping on the DeSantis bandwagon is just that we need to see more from him. That's all I've said. Because in many ways, he reminds me of Chris Christie 2020. And by the way, Chris Christie 2012. Chris Christie 2012 was a great candidate. He should have gotten the nomination probably, and at least of the candidates who were being talked about later on in the race. He was a great contender for that. He, a couple years earlier, had started losing weight, right? And he really tried to gear up for 2016, and it was just too late at that point. State politician, said all the right things, did a lot of the right things, was very adept. And I think that Ron DeSantis is a better candidate than Christie was, but we need to see more from him. I have a lot more.
And you might see that for 2028, possibly, or at least maybe 2032.
Trust that DeSantis will go ahead and do the right thing.
Because I think 2028 might be for Gavin Newsom. I have a feeling. I don't know. I might have a prophecy. I might have more of that, but I don't know. It's like, how things are going, I wouldn't be surprised to do some 2028 and he wins.
Than I would in Kristi Noem or Caitlyn Jenner, for that matter. But we've just got to see this because the Republicans have been fooled before.
Yes, and you've done it with Trump, and you're doing it again with Trump, apparently. And I think the conversation back then was like, we love Trump, but DeSantis has less skeletons in his closet and is much younger. So strategy-wise, it makes sense. But like Joe Biden, I don't think Trump wants to. He's not. He's a selfish narcissist, egomaniac. He's not gonna He's not gonna pass the torch on. Again, he wants a third term. And maybe even more, because he wants to be a king. So it's not surprising when he said, JD Vance, listen, I like JD Vance. I like JD Vance. I like JD Vance. I like JD Vance. But I don't think he's my successor. I don't think he's my successor. He's not my successor. He's not my successor. He's just, again, great guy. He's a great guy. He's a great guy, but he's not my successor. Because he doesn't want a successor. He wants to be a king. Come on now.
Okay, we've had our hearts broken. We've been jilted by people that we have elevated to governorships, to the Senate, to the House, to the Republican presidential nomination. You know who I'm talking about here. I'm talking about Republicans' biggest mistake in a long time, Mitt Romney.
And this was a stupid take.
Mitt Romney was the one candidate who was running for president who could not credibly oppose Obamacare. Obamacare was the biggest issue in 2009 and 2010 and 2011. In 2012, that was going to be the issue on the campaign. There was one Republican in America who could not run on this issue because he invented Obamacare when he was governor of Massachusetts. Who was that candidate? Mitt Romney, the one that we ended up nominating. And now Mitt Romney is persona non grata in the Republican Party, and largely for good reason. But
because he's principled, and well, we can't have that anymore in the Republican Party.
Think about this. It was not that long ago that Republicans chose him to be our standard bearer. That shows you how the Republican Party is divided, is unclear in which direction
has become idolatrous, to be blunt.
Wants to go. So Romney was the governor of Massachusetts, and he ran for president. Then he became senator from Utah because he's just a rich guy who doesn't really matter where he lives. So he became senator from Utah. But he had a tough time at the Utah Republican Convention just a few days ago when he was booed off the stage.
Okay, this was the comment that I thought was before that, but this comment I'm about to read afterwards is connected to the other comment about Mitt Romney.
The establishment media are totally pushing us to be divided. They're totally pushing us toward civil war.
No, you guys did the Civil War with yourselves and MAGA, between the old guard and the MAGA guard, the new right, if you will. The communist right, if you will, to be honest. The MAGA right-wing communist fascist regime. And all those can make sense because in a sensible way, they've done the communist route via slowly getting into the institutions of conservatism. The fascism part is, well, I don't think I need to say it, it's quite obvious, but to say it again, one of the first things the Nazis did was to destroy trans healthcare. One of the first things the Trump administration did was to destroy trans research via the White House page. And a lot of other things I would say are quite fascistic. Like trying to have a third term. If we don't want to have a Night of 100 of the Long Knives, we gotta stand up. Jesus Christ's name, amen. I'm mainly talking about Republicans. Like, seriously, when will you stop bowing down your knee and stand up?
The former governor of Massachusetts, who became the Republican nominee just, 9 years ago, was just booed off the stage in Utah, where he is the Republican senator. My, oh my, how things can change. Take a listen to Mitt Romney's chilly reaction.
Now, you know me as a person who says what he thinks, and I don't hide the fact that I wasn't a fan of our last president's character issues.
Boo, we hate character. How dare you say we should have principles?
I'm also no fan. Aren't you embarrassed?
They're not embarrassed. They're idolaters. Idolaters, I don't think, are that embarrassed of worshipping man.
And I'm also no fan of the president's... Yeah, sure. My friends, this is the moment I was talking about. Please, thank you, show respect. So, yeah, I understand that I have a few folks that don't like me terribly much, and I'm sorry about that. Oh, yeah, you can boo all you like, but I've been a Republican all my life. Thank you.
Tough, but that was the writing on the wall for Mitt Romney, and then I think he retired, and he was like, yeah, nah, I'm done. It's sad, but, you know, it's sad. It really is. It's sad, and it's like, I never wanted to leave conservatism. It felt good, until it didn't. I went straight up to the radical left, and I'm like, oh no, nope, I'm out. I'm out the door. Until I was like, I think I'm just quite centrist-y. Maybe not centrist. I'm not the enlightened centrist who thinks everything should be balanced. That's all things should be. No, I'm like, no, I think I'm center-right on this issue. I'm center-left on this issue. I'm center-progressive on this issue. I'm center-conservative on this issue. And I'm like, well, I'm a Christian first and foremost, so now I'm a Christ-centrist. That's where I am today, and I'm thinking that's what I'm going to be, mainly. I'm mainly going to be Christ-centrist. Which I think makes sense. I think most Christians should. But maybe not, it just depends. Ultimately, make sure you're a Christian first and foremost. That's the big, huge decision you have to make, ultimately. Before you die, or right before you die. That's the big decision to make. But here's a comment from that. I'm like, wow. Just wow. I mean, yeah, sometimes you got to have your own crowd boo you, because that might be somewhat healthy to an extent. It's like, okay, I know, am I doing something wrong, or am I doing something right, and they think it's wrong? Which in this case was the second for Mitt Romney. But, like, if they're against you by booing you, like that Republican in the 2020 RNC that went from Democrat to Republican, I don't remember who that was. Tulsi Gabbard, I think? No, it wasn't Tulsi Gabbard. I think, I don't remember. Because the Democrats were doing something wrong with him, this Republican has to at least switch to independent. Not saying switch to Dem, but at least independent at the end of the day. If your own crowd is against you, you got to go to another crowd in some cases. And I think that's what he did. That's what Bernie did. He went independent because they're like establishmentarian Democrats were like, no, we don't, no, what? No, oh gosh, no. Fixing the problem, no. What? We'll be out of the job with peace. No. And so they kicked him out. Oh, well, he said, you can't fire me, I quit. And they're like, bye-bye, we have Kamala Harris. Well, how that turned out. It didn't turn out so good. It did not turn out so good.
Himself. As he's the adult in the room, he's Mr. Republican. I'm the old principled kind of Republican, but now you guys have gone crazy. I've been a Republican all my life, you Johnny-come-latelys. I've been a Republican all my life. Is that so, Mitt? Let's rewind the tape to when you were running for senator from Massachusetts against Ted Kennedy in 1994. Were you a Republican all your life?
Look, I was an independent during the time of Reagan-Bush. I'm not trying to return to Reagan-Bush. My positions don't talk about things that you suggest they talk about.
Oh, I guess you weren't a Republican all your life. I guess
Yeah, that's possible, and yeah, of course, maybe he lied, because that's what politicians do. It's sad. Apparently, he has repented in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Because, I have to agree with that. It's like, I don't think you were a Republican all your life, but maybe you were, ideally a Republican, or your beliefs were Republican, but you just couldn't do the party, which,
During the
yeah.
most
I think as a Christian, independence is the best way to go, because the Democrat platform says that abortion and birth control are the same thing, and as a Christian, I cannot be a part of that party. Also, and on the other side, Republicans vote for child marriage and loosening child labor laws like 2025. I can simply not be in that party that has that platform or seems to want to vote for those things or believes in those things that are just ungodly. So I might vote Republican or Democrat, but I am independent because that's the best way as a Christian to go. It will all stand before God for voting for somebody.
the
Even
most
if
important
even if they were the best of two evils, I think you'll still be somewhat judged for it. Not to get to heaven, but have rewards or no rewards in heaven. So
Republican administration in recent memory before Donald Trump, and I guess in that there were 2 terms, defeated the Cold War. I guess it ends up being a more consequential Republican administration. Mitt Romney was not a Republican. I was an independent during the time of Reagan Bush. I'm not trying to return to Reagan Bush. Now, he may have been a Republican during that time, and he may have just been lying to Ted Kennedy. But this is the problem with Mitt Romney. I am not saying that I despise Mitt Romney. I detest him. He's just...
I mean, maybe now. I don't know.
Weak. That's the problem. There are many things...
Because he's principled, therefore you're weak, because you have principles. And I'm sorry, that is what's going on here.
I admire about Mitt Romney. Well, that's not. There's one. His hair. I admire the hair. He's got great hair. But as a political matter, Romney represents the liberal wing of the Republican Party, just like his dad did, George Romney. And Mitt Romney has been on the wrong side of a lot of issues here. He was on the wrong side of the Reagan administration, for goodness sakes. He was on the wrong side of Obamacare. He's on the wrong side of BLM. The guy was out marching with BLM last year. BLM was torching the country coast to coast, starting in Minneapolis, but not ending in Minneapolis. And what does Romney do? Does he go out and say, hey, don't burn down the country? Hey, this is bad. We oppose this organization. No, he goes and marches with them.
Because I think he understands there's a difference between riots and the overall movement. I mean, it's like me saying that, yes, there are extreme pro-lifers that try to kill doctors who do third-term abortions, but that is not the whole of pro-life. It's just not. Can some arguments lead to that? I mean, if you do believe a Holocaust 10 times the size is happening, you might want to stop what you would call the Nazis, in a sense, the abortionists who do that, to stop. And sometimes stopping a Nazi might be, well, you get the point, and it's like, yeah, and that's why I'm not fully pro-life, because to an extent, that's just the logical extension of pro-life argument there. It's like, we should try to reason with these murderers. Like, if you truly believe that, I wouldn't be surprised if you would try to do that. But I think as most pro-life people know, it's more complicated than that, but yet our language isn't, and that's why I'm partially pro-life. I'm 80% pro-life, but there's a reason why I'm 20% pro-choice, which again, I already made a video there. Thoughts on abortion. My thoughts on abortion, that's what it's called. You should find it there. Look, type in JTF after that, and you should find it there, or my thoughts on abortion, JTF, or JTF, my thoughts on abortion. You should find it there. Yeah. Point is, and I think this is what a lot of them do, sadly, is that they take the extreme and think that's like the mainstream, or they think that's the moderate side, and it's not. Daily Wire is not necessarily the moderate or mainstream of right-wing conservatism. I mean, it is now, but to an extent, I would say somebody like Counterfire will be more like that, Tiberius D to an extent. But since they have principles, you might not even heard of those types of conservative people, or center conservative to an extent. And here's a comment here. I like how Michael Knowles is saying that Mitt Romney is the adult in the room is because most Republicans and conservatives are like stupid, immature children. Again, maybe not say it that way now, but at the end of the day, some kids are smarter than some adults like Crowder, and some adults are not mature like Michael Knowles. So when I'm comparing stupid children to conservatives and Republicans, that's what I mean. Smarter than some. I don't know if Crowder is smarter than some adults. I don't know about that one. Again, I might not agree with everything that I said here, but to an extent, I still hold those views. I still conserve those views, if you will.
I think Romney got exactly what he deserved there at the Utah State Convention. Not every Republican who showed up there got booed. Mike Lee, who is a pretty strong conservative, comes a little bit more from the libertarian wing, but he's still got his conservative bona fides. That guy got cheered, as well he should. He's been on the right side of a lot of issues. But there's a big divide here. Which way, Republican man, which way are you going to go? You've got Romney, who opposed the Republican president, didn't vote for him, right? Probably voted for Joe Biden. I don't know who he voted for in 2020. You've got George W. Bush. George W. Bush, former Republican president, who is now actively working to get amnesty for tens of millions of illegal aliens.
I think piecemeal probably makes sense. And I think the president, if I could be so bold, to call in Republicans who are like-minded and say, let's see if we can't get something done. Border security is always a touchstone issue on this. And Americans have got to be assured that the government's doing everything they can to enforce the border. But there ought to be a recognition that without some reforms, let me rephrase it, reforming will make it easier to enforce the border. Comprehensive may be too big a reach right now.
That just makes sense. And apparently that's too much. He's either squishy or he's not so respected anymore because he literally did the most common sense thing imaginable, which is like, I think we need some reforms on this because it makes sense. Because if it's easier to come here illegally, it is legally, I think there might be a problem. And I think it should be a little bit easier to come into the country because most people who want to come into the country are pretty much predestined citizens. Most of illegal aliens or undocumented immigrants are like the most American to an extent. But, before we get a little more into that, here's a word from my sponsors. My sponsors are you guys, those who support me on PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
Too big a reach right now. And so if they can get DACA done and with some border enhancement, plans to give Republicans comfort in voting for the bill, then all of a sudden there's confidence to be gained. And then they can deal with the work or they can deal with the undocumented. But yeah, that may be a better approach.
George Bush.
How dare you speak common sense?
Been pretty consistent about this throughout his career. He said that he supports amnesty, basically. He tried to work on a big amnesty bill, and that didn't really work. Tried to get the wall built, kind of, but that also didn't really work because it didn't have teeth. He's now saying you've at least got to get DACA. DACA is for the Dreamers, right? And the Dreamers, we're told the Dreamers are these cute little 6-year-olds who are brought over across the border. It's not their fault. At this point, the Dreamers are like 40 years old. And they're not as cute when they turn 40. If we deport the Dreamers, who will watch their grandkids? So yes, the Dreamers are the big issue, and so we've got to give amnesty to millions and millions. But that's only the first step, because then we've got to give amnesty to all of them. And if you get a little border security in the meantime, that's okay. That'll be good. Why is this such poison for the country right now to talk about amnesty? It's not because of, I don't know, racism or thisism or thatism or this isn't who we are, or all these kind of abstract principles. There's a very basic issue here, which is what binds us together? What binds us together? I had a lovely, truly magnificent weekend. I was down in Florida visiting my grandparents and the rest of the family. And we were down there, we were seeing my aunts and uncles. We're all sitting around. We've got all sorts of different political points of view. And some of us are very conservative Republicans. Some are liberal Republicans. Some are left of Lenin Democrats, like one of my dear aunties. And we're all talking. And my grandmother had this very astute question. She said, why is it that America can't be like this? Why can't we all get along? Why can't we all have these interesting conversations and start to persuade one another? And why doesn't the country work like this? And the reason, of course, is that we have very little binding us together. Why does the family work like that? Because we all love each other. And we all have a shared experience and a shared history. And we're invested in one another's success. And a country can have that. But over time, we've chipped away at these sorts of things. What unites Americans? We don't have a common race. Some countries are just racial countries, right? You think of Japan, race by...
Yeah, that's called, I think, ethnocentric, something like that. It's still bad, by the way.
Japan together. America has always had a kind of bit of a mix. Obviously, dominated by English settlers who came from the Mayflower and then later on. But there were the English, and then there were the Dutch in New York, and then there were alliances with the Native Americans. So they weren't part of the same polity, but they did have alliances. Then you had African slaves brought over. Then you had the Irish come. Then you had the Italians come. Then you had Chinese people come. So you've always had this kind of melange of races.
It's called the melting pot of... oh boy.
And that has increased over time. So you're not going to have a common race. We did have a common religion in Christianity. That went away.
Because it wasn't built on that. Literally, the Constitution. Yes, the Declaration of Independence is a declaration, but it's not the Constitution, which is the rule of law, the law of the whole land, which says twice, it says something somewhat negative and also positive about religion. Interesting. And of course, the letters from Thomas Jefferson about the Muslim pirates and the concerned Baptists thinking that they'll be religiously indoctrinated by their Catholic teachers. He was saying, hey, separate the church and state. That's why we have it. Because it's in the Constitution.
You don't have a common religion really anymore.
It's number one,
and
folks.
The common religion in America, the Christian religion, was a little strange because there were all these different sects and denominations, but still broadly Christian. We had a common language, which was English. That is dropping by the...
Sure, but it's still English, and I think not in a racist sense, but in a general sense, what kind of makes countries different is their culture, somewhat their laws, but mainly somewhat their language. That's kind of what makes countries countries. That's why people got up in arms when I think parts of Ukraine banned the Russian language, even though if I'm correct, it's a lot more complicated than that. And also, they're at war with Russia, so, I think it was what we have in America now, most likely, is that first, if you're in the part of Ukraine that's still free, you first have to speak in Ukrainian, then translate to Russian if need be, just like you most likely do now in America since Trump made English the official language of the country. First you speak English, but if not, then translate to Spanish or whatever it would be, which would not be racist if the person doing it didn't have so much racism. Acting like a Palestinian in a battle and at that. That's just racist. That is just racist. But it makes sense because what kind of makes a different country is somewhat their language. And if I'm correct, in Russia, you cannot speak Ukrainian. At all. Not just, okay, first Russian, then translate Ukrainian. No. If I'm correct, in Russia, you cannot speak Ukrainian at all. You may even go to jail. I don't remember. You have to look it up. Or go to Dylan Burns. He'll most likely tell you. Give him a super chat about that one. He needs the money. He desperately does need the money. Maybe not desperately now, but definitely needs the money, especially what happened to his house. If you guys don't know, Dylan Burns' house burned down due to, I think, the electric bike, and battery exploded. Sad, but that's what happens sometimes. But the point is, it's not racist to say our particular country should have an official language, or should be this should be the main language, because that is somewhat what kind of makes a part of the country part of the country. It's not just the culture, but the language thereof as well. So it's not racist depending of who does it and why they do it, but it could be. So I do agree there. We should have an official language, which should be English, but it shouldn't be used in a racist like manner. It should be like, hey, America is this because of X, Y, and Z, but also because English is our official language, which I find correct. Most other countries have that. That doesn't mean you can't speak Spanish. That just means you might have to translate to Spanish second, but first speak English first. That might be it, like in Ukraine, if I'm correct.
Okay. We had a
Which
common
makes sense.
civic religion, right? That was the next thing that Abraham Lincoln suggested in the Lyceum Address. He says we need to have a civic religion where we venerate our founding fathers, where we venerate our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the men who built this country. That's totally gone. The 1619 Project takes aim squarely at that idea of the civic religion and blows it to smithereens.
And the 1776 project goes too far to where I would say maybe some of them, including Abraham Lincoln, would like, but will not be true history. So, yeah, Abraham Lincoln wasn't the best guy, but he did have Emancipation Proclamation. So, these people weren't necessarily great people, but had great minds and made great laws, like Emancipation Proclamation.
And we've now for decades had students in schools taught that our founding fathers were actually evil. We're really great, but the founding fathers are evil.
And that's just the opposite now. The founding fathers are great, but we're so evil. The founding fathers were just God's chosen people, but we're so evil. We're so demonic now. Because we allowed a rainbow flag.
And
colors,
the Constitution is a horrible white supremacist document, and the Declaration of Independence just seeks to enshrine the property rights of rich white men, those jerks. And so that civic religion is gone. So what binds us together into that totally divided country? You're now going to introduce tens of millions of foreign nationals. That's what's going to bring us together. That kind of diversity is going to be our strength. That's insane. Unity is strength. Unity is part of the transcendentals, right? That is what binds people together. And so you can have people from different backgrounds, but they have to be unified in some way.
They have to assimilate, which again is not racist depending on how you say it, because assimilation makes sense. They need to assimilate. If somebody, let's say from Mexico, wants to come to America to be an American citizen, they must assimilate into American laws, the official language, which is English, and American culture. That just makes sense. That's what makes a pretty good protective citizen, is because you want to be an American. If you want to be a Christian, you must use certain language. You might not be able to curse that much, etc. Well, I don't want to be Christian nationalist. I'm just saying, when you're part of something, your old self, in a sense, might have to be taken out. You might still love part of your old self. Mainly, you still like your Mexican food, obviously, but you understand that you are more American, or you are an American now. It's complicated. I never had to immigrate, in a sense, because I was born here, most likely from slaves, most likely.
What unifies us right now? Until we answer that question, I don't think we should admit another immigrant. It would be bad for them, it would be bad for the country. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but not much. This is an existential problem for the country. You've got to figure out what binds you together. And you have forces who are only pushing division. Forces from the left, because it aids their social revolution, and some forces from the right, from the old establishment right, because it serves their economic purposes to keep people sort of divvied up and divided. So that is the old Republican Party of the last, it's not even that old, it's of the last 20, 30 years. That's the Republican Party that's pushing, we need more amnesty, more immigration, more open trade deals that benefit other countries more than they benefit us. And then you've got the conservative wing, which is represented, wild as it sounds, by Donald Trump, by other people who've come in. Meanwhile,
that is a laugh.
Are we at least moving in the right direction on that kind of national unity? No. Maxine Waters, that wonderful unifying figure Maxine Waters, is coming.
And before we get into Maxine Waters and my comment on that, we need to catch up. Oh my gosh, Michael Knowles is doing the Ben Shapiro thing. Do you really mean that? Literally, really? No, it's an expression. I mean, seriously, you say the left kind of does this, but the right is doing this. We can't always be specific in what we're expressing. That's why it's called expression. I don't remember what this is from, so, sometimes it's a hate comment, I don't remember. But this one's very important. So you've got two Republicans, ultimately, especially now to an extent. One are people like Mitt Romney, who are kind of like the adults in the room and the only adults in the conservative era in the Republican Party. Kind of, because I don't know, if not a lot, about Mitt Romney, so I'm just saying from what I've heard, he seems like you don't like him, but you'd rather him than Trump, kind of. And those are ones I would say are more principled, and yeah. And the second one is Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like what God said, I have life and death before you, choose life. In this case, you got, in some or a lot, in this case, a slower death or a quicker death, politically or and really physically, but there are a third and in general other choices than the slower death Republicans and the quicker death Republicans. You have Dems and independents not advocating for anyone to switch to parties, but sometimes you have to come out of parties that are objectively bad, like the Republican Party right now. Because for me, at the end of the day, you go independent or Democrat. Today, just go independent, not Democrat. Because Republicans are not a good choice, but still should be a choice. Kinda. Not at the moment, but kinda. Right back, folks. Here's a commercial break. Alright, this is not just some sponsor or Patreon thing. It's about following Him, the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. If you want to follow Him, if you want to give your life to Christ today, prayer is in the description down below. But if you're a backslider, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, prayer is in the description down below. But if you want the gift, a free gift that Jesus Christ can only give, Jesus is the only Holy Ghost baptizer. If you want to be baptized in the Holy Ghost, the evidence of speaking in tongues, prayer is in the description down below. It might be way up there, way down there in the description. Just depends on how long my description is for my show, my podcast. So, yeah, if you want to give your life to Christ, or if you're a backslider, you want to rededicate your life to Christ, or if you want the baptism of the Holy Spirit, the evidence of speaking in tongues, those prayers are in the description down below. But if you forgot about it, or if you're wrestling with it, and you finally decide, okay, I am going to get saved, or, okay, I am going to rededicate my life to Christ, or, okay, I am going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit, or the evidence of speaking in tongues, all of those three prayers are in all of my videos. From the first one to this one, and to the ones to come, all of those three prayers are in the description down below for all of my videos. So if you do forget, or if you are wrestling with it, and you finally decided, okay, I am going to do this, whether it's giving your life to Christ, rededicating your life to Christ, or being baptized in the Holy Spirit, or the evidence of speaking in tongues, those three prayers are always in the description down below in every video that I make. If I'm correct, I think Michael Knowles is pretty much saying, as a country, what does bind us. Okay. What does bind us, or what brings us together now? There's a skit from SNL. It was about what still works, and the only thing that still works is Tom Brady, which is kind of true in a sense of a way. I don't really watch SNL, I just saw that. I'm like, your skit is right, or what does work slash still works, what binds us together. I'm like, we need to have reasonable conversations with the moderates and try to discard the radicals on both sides, and at the end of the day we used to and kind of still now agree slash sometimes agree that there was slash is problems, but not the solutions. Now we disagree with the problems and solutions, and I think, yeah, at this point, I think we have different problems with different solutions. It's not the same problem, but different solutions anymore, like it was, I guess, what most people say, like the 90s. Or even before that, at least when debates were cordial. I mean, I encourage you guys to watch the first debate and the debate with Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. We sadly do not have that. Probably we will have that back in Jesus Christ's name, amen. But MAGA wings has got to go. The idolatries has got to leave for that to really happen. And Democrats gotta figure out who leads you.
I got you saying, look, it's not that America was racist, evil, terrible, but now it's gotten a little bit better. Like Tim Scott says, it's not that it was bad in the past, but now it's better. The Republican senator who gave that response to the State of the Union. No. Maxine is saying, we're getting more racist every single day.
Is America not a racist country?
Well, I don't know if he was counseled to say that or whether he really believes that. If he really believes that, then he has missed not only the history of the country, but what is going on right now. As we watched the invasion of the Capitol on January 6th, and those people following Trump saying they were taking back their government and they were willing to harm people. As a matter of fact, not only were they willing to harm people for the Capitol Police, who happened to be people, police of color, African American, they were calling them names, the N-word. Every day we have seen, this nation get more racist than anybody thought perhaps would be at this point in time.
So, first of all, there is no reason.
I don't know. I think depending on where you are, I think I can see that. Depending on where you are, ultimately. If you're in the Deep South, I can see why. If you're in the North, maybe not so much. It just depends.
Ever take anything that Maxine Waters says seriously. She's a very unintelligent woman who is very clever and shrewd at politics, so I want to give her credit for that. But more than her lack of stuff going on between the ears, she is so cynical. She does not give a whit about the truth. This woman just called for a riot. Before the George Floyd verdict was given out, she said that if the verdict doesn't go exactly her way, people need to get in the street and get more confrontational. They've already burned the country down for 6 months, so we got to get more confrontational. What does that mean? Detonate a nuclear weapon? How can you get more confrontational? This woman was defending the violence during the Rodney King riots 30 years ago. Okay, this woman is an absolute cancer on American politics, and she has the gall, she has the temerity to come out and say, the Trumpers, they went into the Capitol and they were screaming the N-word. Do you have any evidence of this? Of course not. And there was an insurrection. Lady, you just called for an insurrection like 2 weeks ago. But then it didn't need to materialize because you got the verdict that you wanted, because you pressured the judiciary, just like the president did. Give me a break. There is a real social incentive here for leftists like Maxine Waters to divide people up and get everyone agitated on race. Do you know what the real racism in this country looks like? Well, there is actual legal racism in the form of affirmative action that disadvantages whites and Asians in university policies and advantages black people and Hispanic people.
True.
And some other groups. So that's legal racism. But do you know what racism, as we talk about it, looks like in America? It looks like a Jeopardy winner having to apologize for showing the number 3 on camera. That's the.
And before I get into that, I just want to say in my comments paper here, Michael Knowles, do me a favor here. Replace Maxine Waters' name with yours. It makes sense. So much sense. Just so much sense. What he said about Maxine Waters, and that's basically kind of like Michael Knowles at this point, if not back then as well.
The real racism. I am serious. This really happened. A Jeopardy winner, Kelly Donahue, just was absolutely eviscerated on social media because he was accused of flashing a white power sign. What was the white power sign? He did the little circle with his index and thumb, and then 3. What is it? It's the OK symbol, first of all, and it's 3. You'd see basketball players flash that when they hit a three-pointer. But he apologized anyway. He said, "I'm truly horrified with what has been posted about me on social media. I absolutely, unequivocally condemn white supremacy and racism of any kind. People who know me personally know that I'm not a racist. But for the public at large, it bears repeating, I'm not a racist. I reject whites and condemn white supremacy and all forms of bigotry for the evil they are. It's shameful to me to think anyone would try to use the stage of Jeopardy to advance or promote such a disgusting agenda." Nobody would ever. It's not even close. There aren't white supremacists. There's 3.
True, and most of the time they don't even know a lot about Christianity, which is fine. I'm just saying, it's dude, it's John 3:16. It's John 3:16. It's John 3:16. Goodness.
That you're thinking there's a zillion bigots in BLM.
It's John the Baptist. John. Man.
A zillion bigots in Antifa. There's a zillion bigots in Congress, like Maxine Waters. White supremacy, not really a thing. But he goes on. He goes, "During the taping of my 4th episode, I was simply raising 3 fingers to mark my 3rd win. There was nothing more I was trying to indicate. I deeply regret this terrible misunderstanding." Stop it, please. Don't stop embarrassing yourself. He goes on. He goes on because he buys the lie. He buys the lie that white supremacy is a big, gigantic, horrible epidemic in America. And his symbol, he could really be seriously interpreted as OK symbol or the 3 symbol. It could really be interpreted to mean white supremacy. And he's got to apologize. I'm sorry. It's not about any of that. These people, these race hustlers like Maxine Waters, they're not trying to fight white supremacy. White supremacy is not a thing. They are trying.
Yes, you heard that, folks. You heard that right, folks. White supremacy is not a thing. What do you say to that?
To elicit the very reaction that this poor schlub gave them. They are trying to impose upon you a new understanding of symbols. They're trying to impose upon you a new understanding of language. They're trying to get you to grovel and apologize. This Jeopardy winner who apologized for making the 3 sign, for making the OK sign, shows you the whole game that the left engages on political correctness, on wokeism. They're the same thing. It's a new term for the same old thing. Just like political correctness always changes the terms, they've changed the term even for political correctness. The trick of political correctness, here is that they politicize all of the terms.
To an extent, I can see that, but before we get into that, I just want to make things very clear about the OK symbol. It's not the OK symbol that you use with your hands. It's not the symbol that's bad. It's how the symbol is used. If I'm correct, most neo-Nazis, and yes, there are white supremacists, they exist, and white supremacists use that as the 3 Ks. They use the hand symbol of the OK sign to do the 3 Ks. KKK. Also, the OK sign looks like kind of a K. It's like how the Confederate flag isn't actually the Confederate flag, it's the it's a rebel flag, blah blah blah, battle flag, X, Y, and Z excuses from the Confederate Army. But now, since it's been more used as a pretty much as a separate country flag since via Confederacy and white supremacy, they want a totally different country that's antithetical to the ideals of our country, etc. It was the most popular Confederate flag now. It is considered now to be called the Confederate flag.
This was part of the agenda of the early theorists in PC, and then it became explicit in the 70s when the second wave feminists said that the personal is the political. So even the way that you wash the dishes, even the way you interact in your most intimate...
So from what I know of, first wave feminism was great, second wave feminism was great, and maybe had some things in there that weren't so good, and third wave feminism might work for, like, other countries that are very sexist, but nowadays third wave feminism isn't necessarily needed that much, and radical feminism is an extension of third wave feminism to an extent. At least that's what I used to believe. Now I think third wave feminism is somewhat still like that, but extreme feminism, I think it's still different, but I do think it does come from the third wave feminism. Like how buildings are somehow patriarchal because they are a shape of a male private part. It's like, I don't think that's what they meant, and I think you're going too far with it, but when you think that everything's political, which the left, and especially on my left, think, when you see buildings, you see a big, huge, you know what, apparently, because patriarchy. It's like, no, not necessarily. And what happens if a woman built that? Well, she's a victim of the patriarchy, etc. That could be the case, but it's like, this is not it, folks. This is not it. You missed the plot.
Relations that is political in some way. So now, what's so brilliant about this, say, critical theory, wash the dishes, even the way you interact in your most intimate relations, that is political.
Actually, the right made gay people existing political. No, don't get too political and talk about your gay friend. That's too how is that political? You made it political.
In some way. So now...
That was the right's doing, not the left. Now the left might try to use it to an extent, but it's like, no, that was the right that made intimacy political.
What's so brilliant about this, say, critical theory...
Made marriage political. Bathrooms of all things political. You're the ones who used the leftist thing there. You're the ones who did that.
Which just
ironically
puts this harshly critical lens on everything, is that even if it's ridiculous, even if the idea that the OK sign with the 3-point sign, that's
not that ridiculous, and also sometimes the left is trying to do what the right does, and I'm like, good job, you're kind of figuring it out. You're kind of going to my side of Christ-centricism. I'm joking.
Stands for white supremacy. How? I have no idea.
But I'm not joking that the left sometimes does. Like, really? It's just a business, like the right or whatever. It's like, interesting. How the tables have turned, tables turn.
Even if that's so preposterous when they make that claim, the very fact that they do make that claim and that other people echo that claim means that now this symbol, which nobody has earnestly meant to mean white supremacy, now it does come to connote that by the sheer will of the leftists who say so. Now we have to think about that. Now if I make the OK sign, hey, Michael, you're going to come out and have a drink with us later? Sounds great. I make the OK sign. This now could be posted all over the internet. I've done it about 100 times in the show now, so I'm sure it's already going to be posted on the internet. That can be posted now to say Michael supports white supremacy.
If your fruits show white supremacy, then use that OK sign. I might question why you use that OK sign a lot. But if you don't, then I'm like, no, it's just an OK sign. This could be fine, depending of how you do it. You look at my fruits, when I do this, or stuff like that, or this, if I'm doing Trump or whatever, I'm not being white supremacist, which, yes, black people can be white supremacists, because a lot of racists say they have black friends, and a lot of slave masters had relationships with their slaves. And a lot of racists might have black wives. So it's stupid. The racism is stupid. Like, I don't get it, but it's more of, if you're in your place, which is racist, then it's fine. Black people who are white supremacists know their place, which again is racist. That's why they're white supremacists, because they believe that the white race is superior to their own race. That's why they're subservient. That's why they're subservient. That's why they're still white supremacists, because they believe that the white race is superior to their own, so they're being subservient as a black person who is white supremacist. Point is, if you look at my fruits, I'm not white supremacist, I'm not racist, I know what racism means, so when I do the okay sign, or I use it or whatever, based on my fruits, which you should, basically based on my actions, what I've done on Twitter, things of that nature, I can use that, and I actually mean okay. I don't use this symbol to secretly call out to my white supremacist friends, because my fruits show that I'm a white supremacist.
Be posted now to say Michael supports white supremacy. And a bunch of idiots are going to go along with that. And even some conservatives are going to think, well, it's what the symbol means now. This is why the left is so concerned with appropriating symbols. They appropriated the rainbow, for goodness sakes. Left homosexuals and transgender people and whatever, leftist sexual revolutionaries have adopted the rainbow flag. I've noticed that my conservative friends, who might be a little bit light in the loafers, of different sort of sexual persuasions, they don't go around waving the rainbow flag, unless they're Donald Trump, I felt that was a mistake on the campaign trail. But they don't post the rainbow flag in their Twitter bios. They don't embrace that symbol, because while the left says that that's a symbol of their sexual identity, they themselves say, no, that's not it. That's representing something that I don't want to be a part of.
And to an extent, at least for me, especially if you're a Christian, if you want a rainbow flag, it's fine. Maybe you can say it's for Noah's flood, or if you are an LGBTQ plus person who's a Christian person who is LGBTQ plus, that's the right way to say it. I think you can have like a rainbow cross flag, or the rainbow flag in general. Just don't make that your idol. Don't make your sexuality your everything, or your gender identity your everything, because your everything is Christ Jesus. Your identity should be first and foremost in Christ Jesus if you're a Christian who just so happens to be LGBTQ+. Because it should be just a reality to you. It's a fact of life. It shouldn't be your whole thing. It shouldn't be part of your personality, per se, necessarily. But it should just be a fact of life. That, yeah, you're this, and yeah. And I'm proud that I can say I'm this without getting killed. Sadly, depending on where you are, you might still get killed, but prayerfully that stops in Jesus Christ's name, amen. Just like me being black. I'm proud of being black, and I can basically go to any male bathroom. There isn't a male bathroom for white people or black people anymore, and I'm proud of that. But, I don't say my blackness is everything, because it isn't. That's just, I'm black. That's just a fact. And I'm proud of the achievements and I recognize the struggles of being black. Of back then and now. Copy and paste that with LGBTQ+.
That's representing something even other than sexual desire. It's a political symbol. And the left took this political symbol, the rainbow, the symbol of hope, this beautiful symbol that shows us that God's not going to destroy the world in a flood again. And they say, no, this is ours now. And
if you want to be honest, the Christians took the rainbow. Because the rainbow basically, overall, is just after the rain, the sun shines and colors come. And then we Christians and Jewish people were like, this is showing that God's mercy after judgment. And now, for some, it is showing that different colors are united. It's like the community of gay people, lesbians, trans people, bi people, etc., LGBTQ plus people, is under the rainbow, in a sense, under the rainbow flag. Just like every Christian's under the cross. It's not religious. I just made a video about how politics and religion are not the same. Just check that out. Just should be there, right there. The point is, if you really want to go there, the rainbow has been taken from Christian/Jewish people, or at least Christians, then LGBTQ plus people are like, yeah, that's a pretty good symbol for us too. I mean, that just happens. I don't know what to
Now,
tell
when
you.
you see the rainbow, that is what the symbol means.
It doesn't have to be. I'll say it like this. It could mean that, just like the OK sign could mean KKK, or not. Same the rainbow flag. It could mean a Christian might use the rainbow flag, but usually it's now LGBTQ plus. Usually,
Careful about that. Not
that's
give
how
up the
words
symbols
work.
to the left. We need to embrace our symbols. We need to lean in. We need to offer that substantive view of politics. And this is all to justify insane policy. So I'll give you, to me, one of the craziest examples of politically correct redefinition in the last few years is they redefined criminal.
And before we get into that, I just want to say this with my comments. The main problem with Michael Knowles is that he is just against change. Quite simply, he's against any type of change, really. Because pretty much, like any type of change, even if it was change that would help his terrible ideology, he's against. Please, people, do not be like that. Always be open, well knowing who you are, and also he kind of wants change if it's change for the worst future at the end of the day.
Convict to be justice-involved person.
And yes, birthing person, those things, it's like, yes, this is bad. Why do this? Anti-racism just means you're not a racist. Like, we don't need these special words for things that we already have. I do agree with that. That is legit woke, which I made a video about that already.
Yes, justice-involved person, which is ironic because criminals are injustice-involved people. Right?
It's called, what is woke? Right-wing woke, to be blunt.
They're not involved in justice. They're involved in injustice. But why? Because justice-involved person, that sounds okay. That sounds nice. It makes them sort of passive figures.
I get it. It's like they're involved in the justice system. So if you're a criminal, you're involved in justice. But it's like, no, we criminals fine.
California is now planning to increase the
Of course,
rate
it's California
of early release for 76,000 inmates, including about 63,000 people who were convicted of violent crimes, including about 20,000 people who were sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. So people who did really, really bad stuff, they are now going to see their their chances at early release increased tremendously. Why? Because if you take the leftist view of criminal justice, it's not their fault that they went to prison. It's not their fault that they committed their crimes. It's our fault. It's society's fault. They're just passive people. And actually, on the racial politics side, black people are overrepresented in prison among the convicted criminal population. So that's evidence of racism. So you got to let them out, even if they committed horrible crimes. Plenty of people. It's awful. It's racism. It's bigotry. So you let people out, or you let them off the hook. And then what happens? They go commit more crimes. Illegal alien, Jesus Leal Corona, is a 49-year-old illegal. He pled guilty to second-degree vehicular homicide. He killed a 24-year-old guy because he was drunk driving, and then he hit this guy. This guy had a record. This guy, Jesus, had been arrested in Texas and New Jersey, but he was never deported. The guy should have been deported the first time a cop saw him. He's here illegally. He's violating the law. But no, because it's not his fault that he came here illegally. It's society's fault. It's our fault that we had borders in the first place. We should have just invited him in. We take in, 2 million people, more than 2 million people a year. It should be 4 million. It should be 7 million. We should take everybody in. What's the effect of that? Well, this poor 24-year-old gets killed. If Jesus had been deported like he should have been, that 24-year-old would be alive today because the guy who killed him wouldn't be here. But no.
And yeah, that is a bad part of the system there. And that's just terrible. Does that mean, therefore, people who just so happen to have certain tattoos or similar tattoos to a violent gang should just be deported with no due process? One of the worst jails ever in El Salvador? No. But,
He's not going to be deported now. He's going to get about 5 years in prison. He'll probably be released early after 3 years. And he'll go right back out, be just fine, because of sanctuary policies. Sanctuary for whom? I think that
ideally for those immigrants who have done what most people would say more of a civil crime. You did came here illegally, but if you're like the most civilly good people, a person out there, which most undocumented or illegal immigrants are, by the way, then I think the best thing, in my opinion, is either A, join the military, pay a lot more taxes, do community service for at least 10 years of any of those things. Because if you've been more of a citizen than most other Americans, then this should be your instance way civil punishment for going here illegally, not rewarding it, but saying, hey, not only, it's not just you came here illegally, but if you're like the most upstanding, I think the best form of punishment in a sense of way, since you did came here illegally, is maybe having a different location, you getting the legal process, especially again, if you've done nothing else instead of coming here illegally, that's all you've done, but you've like saved kids or whatever, it's like join military, community service, things of that nature, or just go to a legal immigration facility, do all those legal stuff, and then come back, boom. I think that's easier, faster, and it shows that we do care about the rule of law, but we also care about who you are, what you're doing here. If you're basically helping our country, why would I let you out of my country? It wouldn't make sense.
The left understands that that's not popular. They know that immigration is a big loser issue for them. It is. The majority of people in this country, according to multiple polls, want to reduce not just illegal, but legal immigration.
Again, same thing with the trans people and I think sports or bathrooms. It depends what the poll meant, what it said, and if it worded it differently, what would it be? And I think those are the best ones. You should check out those polls where it says just the broad question, then gets more specific and see how the percentages change. Because if you just say, hey, do you want illegal people here? Most people don't. Okay, do you want illegal people here that are doing basically Superman stuff? They might be like, yeah, but they should be legal. And they're like, okay, in that case, follow-up question, how will that work out, etc., etc., etc.
That includes a lot of Democrats. That includes a lot of independents. They want to drastically reduce it. According to one Harvard-Harris poll, they want to bring it down by 50%, at least. Legal immigration, too. So why does the left push for this? Because while James Carville is right, this might hurt them in the short term. They might lose an election or two, although, frankly, if they change all the election laws and they federalize congressional campaigns, they're going to have a distinct advantage now put into the law. But even if they lose a campaign here or a campaign there, they go a little too far here or there, in the long run, they will have positions of power. They will have an electoral advantage, not 6 months or a year down the line, but 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. That's going to give them the long game. How do we push back against this? We've got to get much more serious on the electoral front, on wielding power when we've got it, but also on these corporations. We might not want to reward a corporation or punish a corporation or make everything so political, but if we want to push back against what the left has done so successfully, that's the only way that we are going to do it. Can't wait to lock into my base camp right after we end the show. I'm Michael Knowles.
And that's why a lot of people are also, culturally speaking, maybe somewhat on the right now, but more so on the center, because they're like, okay, I go on the left, there's a lot of wokeism. I go on the right, there's a lot of wokeism. So I'm just going to stay at the middle, do my job, pay my taxes, do all those good stuff. And of course, my comment on this is yes, that's how that works. The criminal is always going to be a criminal. There's no redemption and no second chances, no reason why, no understanding of why they did it, and how we can stop more of it. Just punishment, which doesn't work, by the way. Yes, that should be the justice system. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. Of course, punishment is not the only thing, or shouldn't be the only thing in the justice system. Michael Knowles just wants the justice system to just be the punishment system. No redemption, no second chances, no understanding of why they did it, not saying what they did wasn't wrong, not saying that they shouldn't have punishment. That's part of the justice system. And I don't think that person should have been released because I think he needed more time due to what he did, the horrible thing that that person did. It's supposed to be justice, redemption, and in some cases, rehab and punishment. It's not perfect, but it does sometimes work. And if we think like Michael Knowles when it comes to justice system, it isn't Christian, period. It's not. It doesn't have to be. I'm just saying, if your Christian principle is once a criminal, always a criminal, why are you a Christian? You have to be blunt. Because if it's just punishment, then why Jesus died on the cross? People keep sinning, so why not just punish? Because you still have a chance to stop sinning. As in obedience to God and forgiveness, and of course grace, second chances, a possibility that you can change. I don't deserve it. We don't deserve it. But Jesus Christ did it anyways. That's why Michael Knowles isn't Christian, and that's why we all need Jesus Christ.